Peace and bright blessings, guys. It's your Queen of Spades coming at you. So, I wanted to get into it with you guys today on overviews of The Crown for season five, episodes 1 and 2. Let's get into it. So, the first episode of season five was called The Second Anniversary. Okay. And the second episode was called The Season. So it starts off with basically Diana, hmm, Diana and Prince Charles basically going on this family vacay. Well, actually, it was meant to be like their second honeymoon or whatever. And that's what the people, controlling Charles were, or his agenda or whatever, were telling him needed to happen for the sake of the public because they hadn't seen, either one of them out together and stuff like that. And so they were like, for the sake of the public, they need to see you guys together. So they was like, how about a second anniversary? So Charles is like, okay, that's fine. And he's looking out the window, and Camilla's out there playing with his dogs. And so he never stopped seeing Camilla. He always, continued, messing with her. And so, yeah, so, it started off like that. And then they all meet up to go on this cruise, or this boat trip across wherever, um, for the second anniversary. And Charles was talking to the people on the boat because it wasn't just him, Diana, and the boys. It was him, Diana, second cousins of his, some of his men, were on the boat. So it was like, not quite a second anniversary. And like Diana said in the beginning of the episode, she was like, he might as well had invited Camilla along because it's just as much of a second anniversary with her around as it is with everyone else around. So, they're on this boat, and they're eating, they're sitting down at the table, and they're just discussing. Charles is discussing like where they plan to stop and different things like that. And so, you know, at some point, Diana was like, maybe we can stop by a couple of, malls to shop. Maybe we can stop by a couple of beaches on the way. So he tried to get like irritated with Diana, and he's like, um, what did he say? He said something to the effect of, everybody may not want to stop by shopping malls and beaches. So he's like, you may be the only one, Diana, who actually wants to stop by these places. So he's like, does anyone else here want to stop by a shopping mall or a beach by chance? So little Harry is like, I do, I want to go to a shopping mall, I want to go to a beach. And then young William, is like, me too, me too. So he's like, okay, well, then we'll stop by the shopping malls and beaches. And that's how he looked. I was like, why are you so evil for no reason? That's how he looked for real. I was like, just cynical. So he was looking at Diana like I can't stand this girl. And she was looking at him like, so, at some point, Charles comes to Diana and he's like, we're going to have to end this trip. We're going to have to cut it short. And Diana's like, it's not often that we go on trips together with the boys. but when we do go on trips together, and there's photographers and things like that, everything that you want to happen on the trip happens. And I told them I would conform to whatever it is that you wanted to happen, under one condition. And he's like, and what's that? And she's like, under the condition that you'll actually be a husband this time around. I was like, ooh. No, but it was true. It wasn't really like they were almost like strangers to each other because, they just didn't even go in the same circles. Like it almost was like it wasn't a marriage for a long time before that. And it's almost like he was really married to Camilla because that's who he spent the most time with. My cat. That's who he spent the most time with. That's who, he always talked to lovingly on the phone, left messages, checked on. Like you might as well would have assumed that she was the first lady in waiting and not Diana because of how he treated her. And it just was crazy. But yeah, he was like, I have some business to take care of. I'm not going to stand here and argue with you. I'm telling you that this trip is ending early. And she's like, yeah, well, why is it really ending early, Charles? Is it for business or is it so you could get back to her? So he's like, so they're arguing back and forth, and the children are actually on the other side of the boat, but they're talking low, but their facial expressions and different things like that are hinting that there's an argument going on. And I'm sure they had seen that enough to be able to tell, like, uh-oh, mommy and daddy are arguing again. So I felt bad for them because they're looking on watching this, and so are others, and no one's really stopping it or interjecting or anything. So it was just crazy. Um, so at some point, um, yeah, so at some point they finish this trip on the boat, and he goes on back to where he goes. Diana goes back to where she goes, and you could tell for the most part she was just very lonely. Hold on, guys. Okay, I'm back, guys. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think I left off with Diana and Charles having an argument. And that the beginning of episode 1 is what stuck out to me. And Diana, she came off as someone who was very lonely. I think she was having a hard time having any type of companionship or keeping companionship because, like, people would be threatened, like, and threatened in a way like not somebody actually like verbally threatening them, but threatened in a way where, like, somebody could be riding on a bicycle on a highway and a car tries to like run them off the road. And it's just crazy. Like at the time they're thinking it's probably coincidental. This person probably really doesn't know me or who I am. They probably, it was an accident. Um, so at some point they decided that, because in at some point they decided, to separate, but that didn't happen till later. Moving forward into, oh, and then also in this episode, that's when Diana starts hearing like clicks. She's on the phone with different people, and whether it's friends or family members or whatever, every time she's on the phone and that person hangs up and they say their goodbyes, like she'll start hearing clicking on the phone. And she'll sit there for a minute and she'll be like, hello, is anyone there? and nobody will say anything, and then it'll click off like someone hung up on her. And it was just weird. That continued to happen to her throughout that first episode, and it started to become unnerving because, like, clearly someone is there, but who? And furthermore, how did they get on this phone line? And how are they listening, to my conversations? Like, who is this? She's wanting to know that desperately, but she's not coming up with any answers. She started feeling like, I don't even want to talk on this phone or in this house anymore. So she would get out the house and she would go swimming and she would go dancing, in the ballet dance gym. And she would go and visit friends, and she would go to different engagements where she could visit children in the hospital who are sickly, and they loved her being there. It'd be adults too that she would go see that are sick, and they seemed to enjoy her presence and her conversation. So, moving forward into the second episode, which was called The System, basically, she started hearing more of those clicks on the phone. She's on the phone with different people, she's hearing clicks, and she's like, hello? Is someone there? No one's answering her back. Um, she had this friend who worked, in the hospital system. And, he'd help her kind of get in and out from the hospital, without a bunch of paparazzi and stuff like that. And she would, kind of tell him, I'm hearing like clicks on my phone and stuff like that. And he was like, maybe we should look into that. And she's like, yeah, I don't even really feel comfortable, talking on my phone and stuff because I feel like someone's always listening. And so the friend told her, and the one of the doctor's staff, he was one of the doctor's staff at the hospital, that she would go visit the children and the different people at. And he was like, they were, in close quarters in her home, and he looked at her like a sister. And so he was like, I just want to let you know that there's a really bad book that's about to come out about you. No one knows who is um, producing this book or putting this book out, but from what I hear, it's going to be a lot of bad things about you, even things made up about you that are coming out in this book. And so you need to be prepared for that. And I think the best way for you to be prepared is to get a step ahead and put your own book out before this book comes out about you. And he's like, I know a guy, I know just the guy. He's been asking me, if he could possibly get a word with you. He wants to be the one to print out your storyline. Um, and he's here for it all. So she's like, well, how do you know we can trust him? And he's like, I don't really know if I can trust him or not, but he seems dedicated to getting the truth out about you. So she's like, okay, well, I'll think about it. He's like, she's like, I don't want anyone to know that I'm saying anything if I do decide to say something. And he's like, okay, so I'll talk to him about it and we'll see, what we can do about this. So after some time goes by, he talks with this reporter guy. And the reporter guy is like, I'm really interested in getting her story because I actually am a fan of Diana's. And I know that this other book is going to come out and they intend to slam her reputation. So I want to come in with a book of her own, to basically let the world know how she's being treated in this palace by, her husband and also her husband's family. So the guy's like, how do I know that you're going to put out all the truths that Diana, states to you, because once you publish this book, you're going to be a very rich man, nevertheless. So how do we know that you're going to do this? So he's like, "Oh, I assure you, I'm Team Diana." In other words, like, that's my sole purpose. I've written other articles about her in the past to debunk some of the rumors and the things that they said about her or put out about her beforehand. And he's like, "I know somebody in the publishing department, and they're telling me exactly what's going to be put out about her, and it's not going to be pretty." So her friend is like, "Diana is like a sister to me. So I need for you to ensure that you're going to put out the truth about her, and, no sneaky stuff." So he's like, "Yes, I plan to put out the absolute truth, whatever she tells me." Um, he's like, we don't even have to really meet in person if she is kind of like, skeptical about, people probably finding out about her and my meeting and trying to come after her. So he's like, "Okay." So he goes back to Diana and tells her what this guy says, the reporter guy. And she's like, "Okay, so if we don't meet in person, how will he get the information from me?" So her friend guy, who's the doctor, who's like a brother to her, he's like, "Well, he suggested that, you know, um, we write down the current, the events and everything that happens, and, just kind of put in writing everything that you want said in the book." And she's like, "Well, how will he get it?" So he's like, "I'm aware there needs to be a middleman. I guess I can be that middleman. So she's like, "Okay." So they agree on this. He tells the reporter guy, "Okay, it's a go." She's in agreement with it. So they, start with her writing down, some of the first details of her getting involved in the engagement and the marriage to Prince Charles. And she's talking about how, he was constantly cheating on her with Camilla and God knows who else. And because I heard through some interviews and through some live tell-alls about the family, that he was also cheating on Camilla with someone on the side too. But yeah, so it was just crazy. But basically, she started writing down these different events that happened to her, as soon as she came into the royal family. And she's talking about how, like, he would mistreat her. He was, emotionally, verbally, physically, even abusive towards her. Um, she was talking about a lot of different things, how sometimes she'd be so sad, she would try to, self harm. And, one event she talked about was being pregnant with Prince, Prince William, and throwing herself down the stairs because she was going through a major depression and she just wanted to end everything. And, she talked about her cutting herself, different acts of trying to, self harm and completely obliterate. And so it was like really horrifying to hear that she had to go through all these things, detail for detail. Um, it's just crazy that she felt, you know, it's sad. She felt like she had no way out, and she had no one on her side except a few people on her side that she entrusted, and talked to. But even the doctor that considered her his sister was like, "I never knew about all these different acts of suicide. Like, why didn't you tell me?" And she was like, I didn't know who I could tell this to." And he was like, "Well, I wish that you would have told me. Like, you can trust me. You know you can." And she's like, "I know I can trust you." It's just I felt so alone in those times. I didn't know what to do, And you could tell like she was very fragile. She was empathic and intuitive and a sensitive as well. And very powerful healing gifts. But she wasn't in the type of environment where that type of thing was embraced or even, you know, um, allowed for her to just explore her different gifts and talents. So I felt like kind of bad for her. Um, and it was crazy because, he was taking the letters back and forth to the news reporter guy. And the news reporter would send back, messages with questions. Well, how did this happen? And what happened after this? And this, that, and the other. Like getting all the details for the story. And so, he's getting all these details and she's continuing to send messages back and forth through her doctor friend. And he's on the way back to her one day with the notes and the questions from the reporter guy. And this white van starts following like closely behind him. And he's on a bicycle. And it starts following real close. And so it's beeping its horn, it's following him close. I was like, they're trying to kill this man. It was just crazy. So he tried to like eventually like gain momentum and try to speed up, and the van, started following closely behind him again, and it bumped his tire right as he was pulling off to the side of the road onto the sidewalk, and it hit his tire, and it kind of juggled him a little bit, and he was like, the hell just happened? And so he went on to Diana's house and he brought her the notes from the news reporter guy. And he was like, she's like, is everything okay? Because she noticed he was a little rattled. And he was like, it was probably nothing. He was like, there was a white van following closely behind me, and they bumped me. And she was like, oh my God, do you think Charles and his people are behind this? And he's like, probably not. It's not the first time a driver got too close, and bumped the back of my tire. But I'm like, listen, y'all need to stop thinking about everything as just a happenstance, because these people are ruthless, and they weren't seeing it as that. They were just kind of, it was nothing. It was probably nothing. And it was way more than nothing. It was definitely something. So it was just craziness. But yeah, so then the okay, so in part one, the family of cousins that Charles invited along on the boat ride was a woman, and I forget her name, a beautiful blonde haired woman, and her husband and her three children, in which one of the three children, I think the little girl, yeah, she was basically like dying from like a cancer. And so towards the end of the episode, she actually did pass away. And her mother was very distraught. She was very depressed and emotional and always crying, not really wanting to move on with her life because, she had her child buried in her yard. Um, and she said, my husband felt like, she shouldn't be buried this close to us, but I need to be able to see her. I need to be able to talk to her every day. And I was like feeling her, because as a mother, I can understand where she was coming from emotionally. And at some point, um, Prince Philip came to see her husband, but he wasn't there. So he had showed up like too early. And she was kind of like in a state of mourning when he came. And she's like, I'm sorry, he's not here. I can call him. And he's like, no, 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 no rush. It's okay. I'll just come back. And, she was going to call her husband up. But he was like, it's okay, don't worry about it. He felt bad for her. And so at that point, basically, he's like, she's like, I was just about to go out there to see, I think her daughter's name was Irene, but don't quote me on it. And so she went outside and Prince Philip went with her. Where did he go? Okay, I don't know where he, oh, there he is in the kitchen. So at some point, um, yeah, he basically went outside with her to the yard, to the the courtyard where her daughter was buried. And, he was like, this is not good for you to just stay in a state of grief like this. And she was like, I need to be able to see her every day. I don't know what I'll do if I can't. I just die. Like, she was like extremely emotional. She just lost her child. And he's like, maybe someday, you can, learn to kind of get through your grief with finding some things you like to do. Like this is the time, you know. And she's like right now, like while I'm grieving, he's like, yeah, there's never a better time. If you could just find some things you really like to do that you can, pursue, then it'll take your mind, your mind mostly off of the grief that you're feeling, and it'll give you some excitement and something to look forward to. And so she's like, well, thank you. I'll consider that at some point. So he's like, okay. He's like, well, I'll be back. I'll be back. Tell your husband I'll be back to see him another time. So he's getting ready to walk back to his car, and the blonde-haired lady is like, oh wait, there's something in my garage, you might like, since you like to, um, you know, um, is it like chariot ride, those little go-kart looking carts, old fashioned in like the early 1900s, um, that they would attach horses to, at least 2 to 4 horses to. So she was showing him that, and she was like, it's kind of old and it's broke down. I don't think there's much you can do with it, but um, you're welcome to take a look at it. So he's like, this is a beauty. Like he's really like intrigued by the cart. He would get them fixed up and he would make them into like brand new horse and chariot rides. And so, he had the tools and stuff to do it. So he's like, oh, she's a beauty. Like he's really admiring the cart. So she's like, well, I don't know what you see in her, but like, I don't think it can be fixed up. Hold on, guys. I'm back. So she's like, well, you're welcome to take it. So he's like, I tell you what, I'll have somebody to come and pick her up and get her off your hands, but I'll be back to talk with you soon. So she's like, well, no, you don't have to come back and talk with me. So he's like, yes, I do, because I'm going to fix this up and you're going to help me fix it up and you might actually like it. And she's like, I don't know anything about like chariot riding or anything like that. He's like, it's okay. I think it's something that you'll end up enjoying and love to do. So, it just was crazy. It was switching back and forth between Philip and the woman, in their family who is dealing with grief, and Princess Diana and what she's dealing with. And some of the questions that the news reporter guy asked Diana in his letters back to her was, are there any friends that you have that you may have told, some of these private details to of things going on, in this home with you and Prince Charles and the rest of the royals, that could verify your story? Because he's like, Um, that way, you stay out of the limelight and nobody can accuse you of saying these things if I have witnesses that I can actually say are the ones that told me these things. So she gave him a list of friends that she talked to. And he actually started going to those different friends' homes, and he would find their homes like in disarray, not not just unkempt or dirty or anything like that, but like there was a hassle, like almost like a robbery or a kidnapping of some sort, like papers, books, everything just tossed on the ground, like there was some sort of struggle. Who knows what they did with those friends or those people? They never went into that. But they seem to have disappeared, like just out the blue. And so he couldn't really. It's like they were tapping her lines. They were following her. They were following the people that come in and out of her house. They were following her friend, doctor, who was like a play brother to her, following him to the news reporter guy, following the news reporter guy to different places. Like some, I think, and I can't remember, but I think somebody tried to run him off the road too, the news reporter guy. So it was just a lot of craziness going on. So meanwhile, back with Prince Philip, um, he gets his team of people to fix this cart up. They basically painted it, sanded it down, painted it, fixed the wheels on it like it was totally broken and fit for nothing more than a garbage can. But when he finished with it, it looked state of the art. It looked brand new. And he he got back to the woman who was grieving over her daughter. And he was like, okay, so now we're going to take this chariot ride together. He was like, what do you think about it? So she was like, it's beautiful. It doesn't even look like, the old chariot that was fit for garbage when I gave it to you. So he's like, I told you it would be great. It would be a great project. He's like, now we're gonna try it out. So she's like, oh no, 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 it's okay. I'm good. I believe you. I believe it works. And he's like, no, we're going to ride on this thing together. So they're riding along on the chariot and they're having fun because it's like, the horses are attached to the chariot and, he starts showing her how to hold the reins, to go left or to go right or to slow it down or to speed it up. And he was like, now you're getting the hang of this. And she was like, yes, I think I am. Like she was getting excited. He was getting excited because he was able to bring her out of her funk. Like she was in a deep depression. He was able to bring her out of that with helping her to find another joy in life. And that was beautiful to me. Um, you know, Meanwhile, the news reporter guy put out that book. And they were like, so how is it that you know so much details about Diana's life and this, that, and the other? And he's like, well, I've had lots of, confirmations. And so they were like, well, how is it that you know so much about her if you've never spoken to her? You stated that you never actually spoke straight with her. So how is it that you know all these details? So he's like, well, she has acquaintances and friends that, even though Diana wasn't willing to talk with me personally, I was able to look up acquaintances and friends that were eager to speak with me and confirm these very things that I put into the book. So they were like, wow, okay. So he was able to get by without outing Diana. Meanwhile, meanwhile, the woman was that was with Prince Philip. He was walking her to her car. They had had this fun, exciting day of chariot riding. And she was like, thank you so much for that. I didn't know how much I needed that, but thank you. And every scene that when Prince Philip came to her, like she was alone. So I'm like, where is your husband while you dealing with all this grief? Like that was crazy to me. He was nowhere to be found. Um, who knows? Neither were the other children. So I'm like, did they move to another house and just leave her there because she was depressed and miserable to them? Like, what happened to her family? Just was crazy. But as she's getting in her car to drive off, she thanks Philip for the wonderful day of adventure that they had and thanks him for getting her out of her depression, tells him how fun it was after all, and that, she may decide to do it again in the future. And she was like, oh, by the way, I heard that Princess Diana is putting out a book, a tell all on the family and things that she experienced here. So I'm like, you snitch. So, because I didn't want nobody to know that that book was coming out till it came out. So, so I was like, dang. So Philip was looking like, really? So if there was any question of her loyalty with Philip, it became very apparent that she was very loyal to the family, the royal family, and Philip too, because she told him that she didn't have to tell him that. He would have eventually found out, but her telling him that made him like, oh, really? So in the next scene, it shows him getting dressed. He's putting on a suit, tie, and Diana gets a call, or no, either she gets a call or a man, one of her guards, enters the room, and he's like, "Yeah, there's an emergency meeting that is called for you and Prince Philip. He wants to meet with you as soon as possible." So she's like, "Did he say why?" So they're like, "No." So she's like, "Okay." She gets dressed and ready for the meeting, and then he comes in and he's like, how are you? She's like, doing okay. hmm and two of those. Yep. And so yeah, so she's waiting there. He comes in. He's very trying to like joke with her, and she's like on edge, like, why are you here all of a sudden? So at some point he starts talking about, you know um I hope that you know your place. I hope that you know the system and how it works. I hope that you're not putting out this tell-all book about our family. Like, you're a part of this family too. And basically like he was like warning her like, don't do it. And she was like, okay. He was like, hmm, you're not really speaking much. And she was like, don't have much to say. He was like, that by far is the smartest thing you've ever said. I was like, first of all, Philip, don't do it. Don't do it to Diana, okay? But I could understand, where he's coming from. He's trying to protect his family and all, but your family is abusing this woman, and she has a right to speak up about it. So it was like, I started feeling some type of way against Philip after that, because I understand. But like her voice don't belong to you or none of y'all. Like, she can say what's going on with her, especially since she kept it secret for so long. And she suffered from keeping those secrets because, even though she wasn't really telling anybody much of everything that was going on, she was self-harming. She was trying to commit suicide because she had to keep all these things bottled inside. And it's just never healthy to keep things bottled up, which is why I speak the truth regardless of whom or what, because I'm not keeping nothing bottled up. So it's like I could understand exactly where she was coming from. And it's heartbreaking that she had to go through not only all the torture and abuse from Charles, but then like, um, leaned on by the family. Don't be telling nobody our business. Like, what? Like, this woman is really going through this in real time, you know? So I felt so bad for her. But she was basically not really agreeing with Philip, and she wasn't really disagreeing either, which was what was damning to him because he's like, "Oh, you ain't got nothing to say?" Like, I don't hear no yes, sir, or nothing like that. She was like, I don't have nothing to say. He was like, "That's the smartest thing you've ever said." I was like, "Well, let me tell you something smart. I got something to say." But it's getting really good, and it's getting really good. I'm heading into the third and fourth episode of season 5, and I can't wait to do an overview on those and tell y'all exactly what's going on and give y'all my opinion of the ins and outs of those next two episodes, 3 and 4, moving forward in the next videos to come. So that's all I have. That's all I can remember that stood out to me from those two episodes. Um, yeah, and yeah, that's all I can pretty much gather. And if I remember anything, then I'll say it in the next overview. But yeah, so that's all I have for season 5, episodes 1 and 2. And I will be getting back with you guys with 3 and 4. Um, yeah, very soon. And so, hope you guys enjoyed that. And I look forward to talking with you again in the next video. Peace and bright blessings, guys.